So hi Deepak, these are just the 4 or 5 poses that I suggested to you, and you don't have to do them in a particular sequence, but it helps to do them in the way that I'm doing them. So the first thing that we want to do is to make sure that you do any of these exercises with the spine a little bit warmed up. So in other words, don't have a cold start. If you're going to be walking around, do something that is warming up the top half of your body and also the bottom half. So maybe gentle warming up exercises. And we start first in the reclined position. So the first one is the reclined Ekaraja Kapotasana, which is the reclined pigeon. So ideally it's quite easy, and perhaps when you start you want to make sure you have a bolster and a couple of bricks should you need them. If you don't need them, it doesn't really matter, but it depends on how you actually feel. So let's start with the first one, which is the reclined pigeon. So bring yourself to a seated position and have your feet on the floor, and the idea here is to create that number 4 in a reclined position. So how are we going to do that? So we're just going to place our hands onto the floor and lift our hips and gently bring the hips closer towards the heels, and as you do so, and then you just lie on the floor onto your elbows, extend the right leg in the front and extend the left leg to the front, and then gently just lie down onto the floor, and then once again bend the knees. And what you now want to do is to lift the right leg and see how you feel when you feel the right leg. If you feel any kind of pinching, then you want to make sure that you do this as carefully as possible. Then bend the right knee and bring the right ankle on top of the left knee, or just below the left knee. And so perhaps if I was just to turn around, this is what you would be seeing. Okay, so from here, what you now want to do is to make sure that you use your natural range of motion in order to work. So how are we going to do that? The right knee pushes to the front and the left knee pushes to the back towards your left ribs. So you lift that left heel first off the floor, and you lift the left heel then off the floor, left toes and then the left heel, and then gently bring the left knee closer towards that left side of your chest, and you push the right knee away. So you see this little curving action. It's a diagonal stretch, and you feel what's working here around your back part of your body. And you keep on pushing the right knee away from you and the left knee towards you. Now, if that is a problem for you, then you can always thread the hands through and hold the left shin, and then allow that pull of the interlaced fingers to bring that slightly closer. As you do so, you feel that little bit of work going on into the lower part of your lumbar. Try not to lose the connectivity with your toes, so keep them a wiggle every now and then. They should not become numb. If you feel comfortable, and only if you feel comfortable, you then bring that left knee closer towards that left chest. It's a lot of work going on around the right side of your hip at the same time. On the inhale, you can lift the head towards the foot and maybe touch the foot. And then on the exhale, gently lower down. You do this for 5 times. On the inhale, lift, bring the head towards the foot and the foot towards the head. And then on the exhale, gently lower down. Make sure you use your breath when you do so. So inhale, inhale in, exhale. 2 more times, inhale and exhale. Inhale and then exhale. And gently release. Now, release the interlace if you got the hands threaded through. Lower the left foot onto the floor. Lift the right leg, straighten the right leg. Give yourselves a bit of a, let's say, turn into your hips clockwise and then anti-clockwise. And then bend the knee and then bring the foot to the floor. Now you repeat that on the other side, because you have to balance the two, otherwise you'll feel a little bit lopsided. So I'll just whiz through this. I lift that left leg, I bend the left knee, I bring the left ankle just below the right knee. Lift the right toes off the floor, and then lift the right toe. With the natural range of motion, in the same way, we'll bring that right knee closer towards the right side of the ribs, and the left knee pushes away. If you feel that natural range of motion is not really working and you need that little bit of strength, and perhaps you will, then thread that left hand through and the right arm outside, and then interlace the fingers. Then you want to push, you want to pull the right knee towards you and push that left knee away from you. So you feel that pressure, or you feel that activation on the left side of your hip. And if you do the same thing on this particular side, which is on the inhale, bring the head towards the foot. Exhale, down. If they can't quite reach it, make that a little bit of effort. Inhale, head to the foot. Exhale, go down again. Inhale once more. Exhale, down. Inhale, and then exhale. Inhale once more, and then exhale. Very gently release. Take the right leg to the ceiling, lower the right leg to the floor, lift the left leg, straighten, bend the knee, and very gently now bring both the knees closer towards the chest, and gently rock from side to side, and then lean over to the right hand side, and then turn over, head on the hands, and lift yourself up with pushing your left hand into the floor. Come to your seated position. So that's number one. That's reclining pigeon. Number two is, we'll do that because we're already seated, is we'll do the Setubantasana, which is your bridge pose. So have a couple of bricks available, have the bolster available. Yogi's choice as to what you want to do. So similarly, what you want to do is now bring both the feet onto the floor, hands onto the floor, lift the hips and take the hips towards the heels as you now once again lower yourself down onto your elbows and then come to a reclined Supta position. Now from here, what we now want to do is to understand how the hips are going to line up. So I'm going to just turn over so that you fully understand how the hips are going to lift off from the floor. So ideally what you want to do is to make sure that all the parts of your spine are going to lift in a particular order. So I'm going to bring my hands onto the floor, palms onto the floor. I'm going to bring chin closer towards the chest, and I push my feet into the floor. Make sure that the knees are in line with the heels first. That's number one. Okay. Now press the hands into the floor and gently, very gently, by really taking the tailbone, make sure the tailbone goes towards the ceiling as you gently just lift the hips off the floor. Then you're articulating the spine by lifting the hips, and the lower back lifts, the mid to upper back lifts, and then the upper back lifts. So ideally, hips, lower back, middle back, and then the upper back. And you gently take as far as you can. Now, if you find this difficult, obviously, it's important to then have perhaps a brick underneath your sacrum and gently bring that sacrum onto the brick. If you feel, yes, I can do this further, then increase the height of the brick and bring the sacrum onto the brick. And this is what you want to do. Chin to the chest. Now, palms towards the ceiling. Setubandhasana. You stay here for maybe at least a couple of minutes. You find that there is a lot of work going on here in your lumbar area, and at the same time the chest is open, the feet are firmly into the floor, knees pointing towards the ceiling, arms can take them a little bit wider if you want to, chin towards the chest. Make sure you're breathing. We stay here for, let's say, 2 minutes. Now coming down is equally as important as going up. So ideally either you have your brick here or you could have the bolster. I haven't used the bolster, I've just used the brick because it can give you different settings. Then very gently push the feet into the floor, lift the hips up, and you can take that brick away. Maybe you can bring it to the medium setting and then lower the the upper part first, then the middle part, then the lower part. Bring that onto the sacrum. Once you bring the sacrum onto the brick, you glide that away and you gently roll down and push the hips to the front. Staying here, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Once again, bring the knees to the chest and then gently rolling over to the right hand side. Left hand pushes up, pushes into the mat, lift up, come to your seated position. That's number 2. So those are the 2 recline poses. We now go to the other poses which are more onto your belly and to your chest. And I'll leave the most difficult part, which is Bhujangasana, for the end. So the third pose is your puppy pose. So that is very important in terms of alignment. And of course, everything's important for alignment. Now what you want to do is demonstrate it from the side and then do it to the front. So when we come into our puppy pose, we come into our all fours. And the idea in the puppy pose is to make sure that the hip and the knee are in line. Okay. Once they're in line, you're then going to take the hands further. So I'll then turn around and see how the front part looks. So we're here. So I've got my hips and knees aligned. My hands are underneath, my wrists are underneath the shoulders. I have a neutral spine, which is very important, and walk the left hand followed by the right, left hand followed by the right, left hand followed by the right. I'm keeping my spine tall and lengthened as I then now slide, because I can't go any further. I slide my hands further and wrist further towards the front. I bring my chest closer towards the floor. I bring my chest closer towards the floor. The chest needs to come towards the floor and not the head. Once the chest is as close as it can be, perhaps you can touch the floor with your chin or your nose. Now, if that is not available, that means if you can't bring your chin or your nose to the floor, I'll show you what you can do with a brick. So I'm just going to gently bring my hands under the shoulders, lift up. I'm going to place a brick in front of me. And once again, I just walk. I walk. And then I bring my elbows to the floor and bring the brick closer towards me. And that's what I want to do. If that chin or nose does not reach the floor. You want to stay in puppy pose for at least a couple of minutes. That hip or those hips should not move to the front or to the back. They need to be under the knees to get that effective availability of that spine to be working in the way you want it to work. Staying here for 2 minutes at least. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, very gently walk the hands back, and once the elbows are underneath the shoulders, place the hands under the shoulders, gently lift up, and you're in your all fours. And the last one is your Bhujangasana. So for that, you need to be completely on the floor. So I'm going to take my right leg behind, left leg behind, come onto my plank pose, and I'm just going to bring my belly to the floor and my chest to the floor, and I come into my Sphinx pose. Once I'm in my Sphinx pose, what I really want to do is to make sure that the hips and the thighs are firmly on the floor. I take my feet slightly wider, if you can see what's going on. Here we are. Okay, so I move slightly so you can see my feet are slightly wider apart. And then I want to bring my hands where my elbows are. So I lift and I bring my hands closer. So don't put a lot of weight into the hands, and you bring the elbows closer towards the chest, and you gently lift. The elbows are bent. The crown of the head goes towards the ceiling. Don't gaze towards the ceiling. The crown of the head goes towards the ceiling. You gaze in front. It's a really, really intensive back bend. Stay here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and very gently lower down. So what you can't see is the engagement of the hips and the thighs onto the floor. So I'm going to turn around and do the same pose in a cross-directional position. So at least you can see how that back bend is working. So I'll give you a variation as well. So once again, I'm in my all fours. I then I take my right leg behind me and I take my left leg behind me in my plank pose, and I gently just lower down. I bring my chest to the floor and I bring my hands are underneath the shoulders now. And I look to the front. My hips are firmly on the floor. So both the hip bones are on the floor, the thighs are on the floor, the knees are on the floor. Then my hands are underneath the shoulders. I hug the elbows closer towards my ribs. I look to the front, and on the inhale, I gently lift. I gently lift. I gently lift. It's a back bend, so you don't put a lot of pressure onto the hands. In fact, you should be able to take the hands off the floor. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you want to do a variation, take the hands across, bring them onto your fingertips, and lift. That's a variation you can do. Crown of the head towards the ceiling, gaze to the front. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Very gently lower down. Bring the hands underneath the shoulders. Exhaling, bring the head towards the floor. Cross the forearms and give yourselves a rest. Big toes touching each other at the back, if you can't see that. And then the feet, the heels go outwards, crocodile pose, to finish off. Very gently and slowly, you then just want to come up by placing the hands under the shoulders, lift the chest and come into your all fours. And that really should give you those little few exercises that you need to do on a very irregular basis. So maybe it'll take about 10 or 15 minutes to do these 4 in this particular sequence, because you want to finish off on the belly. Hopefully this helps you. If there are any questions, let me know. Hari Om Tat Sat.